you making progress with that panel?
Just about got it. This one needs a precise cut.
Hey, did you see the new art installation downtown?
No, I haven't had a chance. Is it any good?
Just about there, keep pushing.
The first light of morning spilled softly over the fields, casting a honeyed glow on the tomato vines heavy with fruit. She moved silently between the rows, her hands swift yet careful, fingers brushing against dew-kissed leaves as she filled the baskets with the harvest of another honest day. Her face was calm, sun-kissed, and focused, the kind of serenity born only of routine and resolve. In this small countryside corner, where the mountains stood like ancient guardians and the wind carried whispers from one village to another, her life was simple, but never empty. As she hauled the baskets to the roadside stand, her muscles ached from work, not from weariness, and her heart beat steadily with the quiet pride of self-reliance. A little girl from the village stood nearby, watching with curiosity and admiration. The woman smiled at her, motioning toward a crate of the ripest tomatoes. "Want to help me arrange them?" she asked. The child nodded eagerly. Side by side, they worked in silence, surrounded by birdsong and the distant sound of a tractor humming toward the next field. Not long after, a customer approached. He was polite, middle-aged, and paid with a large bill. The young girl who helped watched intently as the woman handed the man his change. It was exact, down to the last jong. Honesty to her wasn't something to be praised. It was the baseline. The man smiled, nodded in gratitude, and walked away. The girl whispered, "You could have kept the extra." The woman shook her head. "If I want the land to keep giving to me, I must give what's right to others." That moment, simple as it was, didn't go unnoticed. From a distance, another man watched. He wasn't a stranger, not quite a friend either, not yet. He had driven in from the mountains, his truck caked in dirt from long roads and narrow trails. His face bore the weather of higher altitudes, his eyes sharp but not unkind. He stepped out slowly, greeted her with a slight bow. "I've heard this is where the best pomelos grow," he said, half joking. She didn't smile, not yet, but she led him to the grove. There, beneath the towering trees, the two spoke, not just about fruit, but about soil, sunlight, root depth, and rainfall. He asked about lemon trees, how long they took to bear fruit, how to protect them from root rot. She answered, detail by detail, occasionally pointing to young plants or offering him a leaf to crush between his fingers. He inhaled the fragrance and nodded with silent appreciation. He wasn't here for small talk. He was here with a purpose, to bring back not profit, but possibilities. "The farmers in my area," he began, then paused. "They've lost faith. The land is unforgiving, and the yields are poor. But if we try something new..." She understood. He didn't need to finish the sentence. She knew what hopelessness looked like. She had seen it in her own village years ago, when disease took her father, when floods took the rice fields, when money ran out before the medicine could arrive. But this felt different. This was action. "How many trees?" she asked. 500 lemon, 500 pomelo, 200 custard apple." His voice didn't waver. I'll pay now and arrange for the truck next week." She nodded. No haggling, no delay. They shook hands, and in that brief moment, something passed between them. Trust, perhaps, or something heavier that neither had the language to name. Back at the house, her mother watched from the doorway, a soft, knowing look in her eyes. "He's not just buying trees," she murmured. "He's planting roots." That evening, over a modest meal, the man stayed. They sat on woven mats, shared rice and fish caught fresh from the stream. He asked about the village, about its children, about the herbs she was known for. She told him everything, and for once, someone listened. Not like a tourist, not like an outsider, but like someone who wanted to stay. Before he left, he handed her a small notebook. "This," he said, "is from the mountain healer, a friend of my father's. He recorded every herb he ever used. I thought you might like it." She opened the notebook, ran her fingers over the faded ink, over the names she barely recognized. Her eyes lifted to meet his. "Thank you," was all she said. He smiled but didn't linger. The next day, word spread that the woman at the farm had landed a huge tree order. Some villagers came to congratulate her. Others whispered behind their hands, "Why would someone from the mountains come all the way here? Maybe she's more than just a farmer. Maybe he's more than just a buyer." She ignored it. There was work to do. As she sorted seeds and watered saplings, she noticed the way her mother moved slower than usual, her joints stiffer in the cold. That night, she brewed a tea of dried ginger, wild yam, and turmeric, one she had learned from the very notebook he had given. Her mother sipped it slowly, then smiled. "He gives good gifts," she said. "Not expensive, meaningful." Meanwhile, in a villa far from the farm, a woman arrived with tired eyes and trembling hands. She was older, elegant, her clothes perfectly pressed, her suitcase small but heavy. She looked around the empty room and whispered a name. James. Her son was not there, but his absence filled the space. She sat down, pulled out a framed photo of a girl, beautiful, sad-eyed, strong. "Dieppe," she said aloud. Then she wept. Her husband found her later, still holding the photo. "You should rest," he said gently. "You've come a long way." She shook her head. "I have to see her. I should have seen her years ago." He didn't argue. Regret had its own clock. Elsewhere, in a quiet kitchen, Deep answered her phone. "Yes, the harvest is on track. Yes, I'll check the northern plot tomorrow." Her voice was sharp, businesslike, a contrast to the soft girl in the photograph. When she hung up, she looked outside, at the fading light, at the tomato crates, at the place where the man had stood the day before. She wasn't thinking about him, not yet. But her heart did something strange when the wind blew from the direction of the mountains. The next few days passed with a kind of tension. The trees were ready for pickup. The villagers helped load them onto trucks. Each sapling, each root ball, wrapped carefully in burlap, felt like a message, one of trust, of belief in the future. The man returned to oversee the transport. This time, he stayed longer. He asked questions not about fruit, but about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. She didn't answer all of them, but she didn't turn him away either. At one point, he said, "You've built something real here, but do you ever wonder what else is out there?" She looked at him, eyes steady. "I know what's out there. I chose this." He nodded. "I understand." But she wondered if he really did. That night, he joined her family for dinner. Her mother laughed more than usual. Her little brother, home from school, asked him to tell a story from the city. He did, of course, full of jokes and dramatic hand gestures. Deep listened, arms crossed, eyes half amused, half curious. After the meal, as they stood beneath the stars, he said softly, "You've made a life here. But I wonder, do you still dream?" She looked up at the sky. "I dream every day, but I plant those dreams in soil, not clouds." He smiled at that. "Then I'll help you water them." She didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. And in that silence, beneath the gaze of 1,000 stars, something shifted. Not loud, not sudden, but deep, like roots spreading quietly beneath the surface, preparing to bloom. It began with footsteps on gravel, soft but unmistakable, as the car came to a stop outside the small farmhouse where Deep had lived for most of her life. She was trimming tomato vines when she heard it, the kind of sound that made her pause mid-motion. Her mother peeked through the window, eyes narrowing with quiet suspicion, then softening into something far more complicated. "It's her," she whispered. Deep stood, wiped her hands on her apron, and turned toward the path just as the door opened and the woman emerged. She looked nothing like the photographs, older, smaller, but with the same commanding presence that could fill any room. This was James's mother, the woman who had once sent words instead of warmth, the woman who had watched from afar as her son fell in love with someone she couldn't understand. And now, after all this time, she had come in person. The silence between them was dense. The air hung heavy with things unsaid. But Deep, ever composed, stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome," she said. The older woman didn't return the bow. Instead, she looked Deep up and down, not with disdain, but with quiet calculation. "So this is where my son found peace," she said, more to herself than anyone else. Dieppe didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her presence was her answer. They sat inside at the low wooden table, drinking green tea that had cooled before anyone touched it. James's mother spoke of the flight, of the change in air, of the ache in her joints that worsened with each hour on the plane. Her tone was even, polite, but her eyes never stopped moving, cataloging every detail of the modest home, every worn edge, every handmade trinket that decorated the shelves. "You've built something here," she finally said. "Yes," Dieppe answered simply, "and you've done it alone." "Not alone," Dieppe corrected gently. "With my mother, with the village, with time." There was a pause. Then came the question Dieppe had expected from the moment the car pulled in. "Do you love my son?" It was not a challenge. It was not an accusation. It was a plea for truth. Deep held her gaze and said, without a flicker of hesitation, "Yes." The woman's shoulders slumped slightly, as if some hidden weight had finally shifted. "He has changed," she said, "since meeting you. He writes less about the company, more about herbs and soil and small children with missing shoes. I didn't recognize his words. At first, I thought he was losing himself." Deep's voice softened. Maybe he was finding something else? They sat in that tentative truce for a long while. Outside, her mother tended to the fire, pretending not to eavesdrop. A rooster crowed too late in the day, and someone's child was crying in the distance. All of it, the sounds and silences, wrapped around them like a second skin. Later that afternoon, James arrived. His motorbike roared up the path, and the dust cloud behind him settled before he did. When he saw his mother on the porch, he froze. Not in fear, but in disbelief. "Mom," he said, almost breathless, "you came." She stood awkwardly, then walked to him. They didn't hug, they never had, but her hand touched his arm for a moment too long. "I had to see," she said, "to understand." He looked at Dieppe, then back at his mother. "And do you?" "Not yet," she admitted, "but I'm trying." That night, they shared dinner at the long wooden table, a simple meal of rice, stir-fried greens, and grilled fish from the river. The conversation was stilted at first, filled with polite inquiries and cautious compliments. But then James's mother surprised everyone by laughing, truly laughing at a story Deep's mother told about a chicken who learned to climb the fence and steal mangoes from the neighbor's tree. It was small, but it cracked the ice. Over time, they settled into something resembling family. Not perfect, not smooth, but real. James's mother stayed longer than expected. She followed Deep to the fields, asked questions about the different kinds of compost, marveled at how tomato plants needed to be sung to, how basil leaves changed flavor depending on the time of harvest. She even helped pack crates for delivery, though her movements were stiff and unfamiliar. One morning, as they sat side by side sorting seeds, she said softly, "He's different here, happier. I thought success was supposed to look like skyscrapers and boardrooms." "Sometimes," Deep replied, "success looks like peace." But not everyone was pleased. Whispers began to circle again about city people meddling in village lives, about love built on differences too wide to cross. One man asked Dieppe bluntly if James would leave once the harvest season was over. Another wondered if James's mother had come to take her son back to his real life. Dieppe listened, but didn't answer, because even she didn't know. One night, after everyone else had gone to bed, she found James outside, sitting on the porch steps. He was staring at the stars, his shoulders hunched. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know how to fit both worlds into one life," he said. "I love this. You, the quiet, the work. But I still get calls from the board. They want me back." "And what do you want?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. "I want both," he finally whispered, "but I'm scared of losing either." She sat beside him. Maybe the answer isn't choosing one. Maybe it's building a new one that fits both. He looked at her, really looked at her. "Would you come with me? If I had to leave for a while?" She hesitated. Her roots were deep, but her heart was not made of stone. "If we return," she said, "if we don't forget who we are." He smiled then, a sad but hopeful smile. "That's all I ask." The next day, James's mother announced she was leaving, not with anger, but with grace. "I've seen enough," she said, "and I believe enough." At the bus stop, as the engine growled to life, she turned to Deep and pressed something into her hand. A necklace, simple, elegant. "My husband gave me this the day our son was born," she said. "Now I give it to you, not as a test, but as a trust." Deep didn't cry. Not then. Not until the bus was a distant dot on the road and the wind carried away its sound. She clutched the necklace like a promise. James wrapped his arm around her, resting his chin on her head. "She likes you," he murmured. "I know," Dieppe whispered. "But more importantly, she respects us." As the season turned and harvest gave way to planting, the village settled again into its rhythm. But something had changed. Deep walked with more certainty. James spoke less of the city, and the villagers began to nod in quiet approval when they passed. A future was being built, not loudly, not perfectly, but brick by brick, heart by heart, belief by belief. And in that slow construction, Deep and James found something worth more than gold: belonging. The mornings had grown colder, and with each breath, Deep could see the mist curl in soft ribbons as she stepped outside, the familiar crunch of gravel underfoot greeting her as she passed through the garden they had built together, now heavy with dew and promise. The leaves of the basil plants shimmered silver in the dawn light, and the small seedlings of chamomile had just begun to push through the dark soil, tender and brave, like the new chapter of life quietly unfolding within and around her. James was already up, seated on the low bench near the tool shed, a steaming cup of tea in hand, staring at the hills that marked the edge of their village. He didn't turn when he heard her footsteps, but she knew he felt her presence, the way one feels sunrise on their back. She sat beside him without a word, wrapping her hands around her own cup, the warmth seeping into her fingers. "They want me back by the end of the month," he said quietly, not looking at her. "The board's pushing harder than before, and my replacement is underwhelming." Deep took a slow sip, the bitterness of the tea grounding her. "What will you do?" He finally turned to her, eyes searching. "I don't know. If I go, it's months, maybe more. But if I stay, we lose that bridge to the resources we've been using. Funding, outreach, the clinic, everything we planned." Her silence was not hesitation, but calculation. She had learned, in her time working with herbs and healing, that not all answers come quickly. Some had to be steeped, like tea, given time and heat and stillness. She set her cup down, folded her hands in her lap. Then we go together. He blinked. What? We go together, she repeated, firmer this time. You do your part in the city, I'll do mine here. But we move as one. His shoulders relaxed a little, like a knot inside him had just loosened. But before he could respond, a shrill voice cut through the morning air. It was one of the village boys, panting, eyes wide with fear. Ko diep, na, ba bai nga roy, jiao chai mao. They were on their feet in an instant, Dieppe grabbing her medical satchel, James helping the boy onto the motorbike. They sped through narrow paths, weaving between banana trees and rice fields until they reached the small wooden house of the elderly woman. A crowd had gathered. Deep knelt beside the unconscious woman, gently cleaning the wound, murmuring reassurances. James kept the others back, making space. After some time, the woman stirred, groaning softly. Deep applied herbs to slow the bleeding, wrapped her head carefully, then looked up at the onlookers. She needs rest, water, and quiet. No bright lights. Someone stay with her every hour. The crowd nodded. Someone muttered a prayer. And just like that, Deep returned to her center, her purpose, anchored in action, not just emotion. That evening, they sat with her mother, explaining the situation. The older woman listened, nodding slowly, her eyes thoughtful. If you go, she said, go with the right heart, not because the world demands it, but because your spirit leads you. Dieppe took her hand. We'll come back. This is home. But even as they planned their departure, tension brewed beneath the surface. News spread fast, and not everyone was supportive. They'll forget us, some villagers whispered. They used us for their little charity, and now they run. One man, embittered from a failed land deal years ago, said loudly in the market, "City folk always go back to where they belong." Deep didn't argue. She kept working. She trained 2 local women to manage the herb station, wrote pages of notes, labeled every jar, every process, every technique. James met with community leaders, arranged for monthly shipments of supplies, promised accountability, but doubt lingered. Then, the final blow came quietly, an anonymous letter shoved under their door. "You don't belong here. Leave before you break more hearts." James crushed the paper in his fist, his jaw tight. "Cowards," he hissed. Deep, on the other hand, stared at it, not with anger, but with a strange, aching sadness. "It's fear," she said, "not hatred. They're afraid we'll leave and forget them." "Will we?" he asked. "Never," she replied. But that night, as they packed, as the room slowly emptied of their warmth and clutter, she felt the weight of that fear settle into her chest. On the morning of departure, half the village gathered at the path leading to the main road. Some brought gifts, dried fruits, scarves, hand-woven baskets. Others brought only their presents. The old woman whose legs they had healed from arthritis clutched James's hand, whispering blessings. The children lined up, holding signs drawn in crayon. "Come back soon. Don't forget us. We love you." Deep tried to smile, but tears blurred her vision. As the motorbike started, as they rode away, she looked back again and again until the village disappeared behind a curve. The city was another world, loud, fast, unyielding. Buildings stretched like ambition itself, glass and steel catching the sun in blinding bursts. James was swept into boardrooms and meetings within hours. Dieppe, meanwhile, wandered the apartment he had prepared for her, modern, sleek, sterile. She missed the scent of earth, the roughness of wood, the uneven song of birds outside her window. But she adapted. Slowly. She volunteered at a small community center, introduced herbal care to underprivileged neighborhoods, taught workshops. Her voice trembled the first time. Then it didn't. Word spread. More people came. A journalist wrote an article, "Village Wisdom in the City." James framed it. But success didn't shield them from struggle. James worked late. Sometimes he came home with eyes red from stress, hands shaking from caffeine and pressure. She stayed up for him, rubbing balm into his shoulders, brewing calming teas. "Is this worth it?" she asked once. "If we change even one life?" "Yes," he whispered. But it was hard. One night he broke down, sobbing in the dark. "I miss them. I miss the silence. I miss you when I'm here, even when you're right beside me." She held him, rocking him like a child. "We're not lost," she murmured, "just finding our way in the fog." Seasons passed. Then suddenly a call came from the village. A flood. The river had overflowed. The herb station was destroyed. The school damaged. 2 houses lost. Without a word, they packed, left the city behind in a blur of taillights and sirens. When they arrived, it was chaos. Mud caked the streets. Chickens clucked atop rooftops. Children cried. But the moment they stepped out of the truck, the crowd parted, and someone shouted, "They came back!" That night, they worked by lantern light, organizing supplies, rebuilding shelves, comforting families. In the morning, Deep stood atop a crate and spoke to the village. "We left to help you more, but home isn't a place you return to. It's the people you return for. We are not leaving again. This time, we build to stay." Cheers erupted. Someone banged a pot in celebration. James grinned, mud on his cheek, eyes brighter than ever. They rebuilt, together, stronger. Months later, James stepped onto the small stage at the community center. He held Diep's hand as he spoke. "This village taught me what success really means. It's not stocks or skyscrapers. It's hands in the soil, laughter shared over soup, the trust of a child, the healing of old wounds. And this woman beside me, she is the reason I understand any of it." Then he turned, knelt, and pulled out a small ring carved from wood and silver. "Marry me," he said. Deep gasped, not from surprise, but from the overwhelming, undeniable truth of the moment. "Yes," she said through tears. The crowd erupted. Fireworks painted the sky that night. And as the stars returned, quiet and steady, she looked at the man beside her and knew there would be storms again, floods and whispers, long nights and difficult choices. But they had chosen the same direction, the same roots, and no wind could uproot what had been planted in love, watered with purpose, and protected by the fierce grace of a woman who had once healed strangers and now had found her own healing in return.